welcome to Healthy AF. You just have Cory again today. Dave has become too popular. He hardly has time for me anymore, so I'm riding solo here again. But that's okay. Hopefully he'll be back soon with us, and we'll get back to our normal banter. I want to dive into what I believe will be a multi-part series on set and rep scheme, and also the breakdown of the different qualities that you can train for specifically in the weight room when it comes to lifting weights. So let me start by just kind of giving you a broad overview of what I mean, and then how I plan to go into it, and then I hope to hit on one of the attributes today, and then maybe next week Dave and I can continue the discussion. So when we're lifting weights, there's really four things that we can train for. We can train for power, strength, hypertrophy, and muscular endurance. And just a brief overview of these. Strength is typically known by how much force you can exert in a single effort, whereas power tends to involve strength but have more of a velocity component to it. And then you've got this concept of hypertrophy, which is just kind of a fancy word for muscle growth. You've probably heard of the term atrophy before, or if you've ever taken your arm out of a cast or seen a friend or family member take their arm out of a cast, you've seen that their limb is usually very shriveled. It's very atrophied. Well, that's the opposite of hypertrophy. So muscle growth, which I should say, and I will differentiate this more, but muscle growth is different than strictly gaining strength. Now there's obviously crossover, but again, we'll do a deeper dive as we move on. And the last thing you can train for when it comes to weightlifting is this idea of muscular endurance. And so today I really wanted to jump into the breakdown of how we should think about set and rep schemes and why we should think about that. And I wanted to again, give an overview of all of these, but then dive more thoroughly into strength. So with all of these, we have a certain amount of sets that we should assign and a certain amount of reps. But when I talk about these are general concepts. They're not necessarily, I will talk about them like they are set in stone, but the truth is, you can never just be training for one attribute at once. For example, muscular endurance typically has higher rep ranges of 15 to 30 reps. So if you've always been doing your workouts at, let's say, sets of 20, you're training primarily for muscular endurance. However, that doesn't mean that you won't get hypertrophy adaptation, strength adaptation, or power adaptation. It just means that the emphasis is placed on this one category of muscular endurance. So hopefully, as I parse these out and break them down, you don't see each thing in a silo, because they're not. They all interact and play together. But hopefully you begin to understand that by tweaking the set and rep scheme, you're placing more emphasis on one category, and that will help move you towards your goal. So I want to do a deeper dive into this idea of strength, because I think it's usually misunderstood. And as I said just a moment ago, strength is traditionally classified as your one repetition maximum. So it's your ability to take as much weight as you can and lift it one time. So probably the best example, or the easiest example for people to relate to, is you've got a bar on your back, it's the heaviest load you can do, you squat down, you squat up. That is your one repetition maximum for squat. And it's a good indicator for lower body strength. So when we think about how many reps we should do, most people typically default to what they've always done. So that might look like 10 reps or 3 sets of 10. That's probably the most common thing out there. Oh yeah, just do 3 sets of 10. The truth is, if you're trying to develop strength, you actually want a lower rep range. So for your rep range, you want to focus on reps closer to about 1 to 6. Now, I will caveat that by saying that if you're a noob or a new lifter, that you have to first build a base of endurance and muscular size to get more benefit from strength. But for those who have some experience in the weight room, who you have some muscle development, then I want you to think about rewiring your brain to most likely a lower rep scheme when it comes to strength. Okay, so reps should be 1 to 6. Why? Because when we are doing strength training, we want to use loads that are 70, 75, 80, 85% and up of our 1 repetition maximum. Now, I've trained for almost 10 years. Most people have no idea what intensity they're working at. They typically think that they are working at an 8 or 9 out of 10, when in reality, they're probably actually training at a 5 or 6. Let me give you a good rule of thumb. If you are training at, let's say, 85% of your 1 rep max, so if your maximum on a squat is 100 pounds, theoretically, based on kind of research and numbers and data that we've seen in the industry, theoretically, you should be able to squat 85 pounds or 85% of your 1 rep maximum about 5 or 6 times. Now, again, that's a rough estimate. You know, you could find things to support, some variation there. But as a general rule of thumb, 5 or 6 reps. Now, most people, when they get that high of a percentage, 85% in relationship, so 85 pounds in relationship to their 100-pound maximum, they feel like they can only do 2 or 3. So again, that's another topic for another day, sort of building awareness around kind of what are your restrictions, understanding your body, being able to push through resistance, knowing when you really are maxed out versus when you, when you have more in the tank. So most of the time when you're doing strength exercises, if you're doing some type of sub-maximal effort, you should have, I would say, only 1 to 2 reps left in the tank. Meaning, if you were to go down into that squat again for 1 to 2 more reps, you would not be able to get back up. Like, you are really, really pushing it. And so the reps, as what I think is probably common sense at this point, the reps have to be lower because the load is so heavy. And likewise, we need to adjust the set scheme. So when we think about sets, it's the total amount of actual working sets that you're doing. Reps are the actual down and up of the squat. So each one that you do would be a rep, 1, 2, 3, 4. Sets would be like the blocks of reps that you're doing. So I could do 3 sets of 5 squats. So when it comes to sets, we actually probably want to have more sets than what is traditional wisdom. Again, most people would think, okay, 3 sets. Well, when it comes to strength, you're probably looking at maybe 4 to 6, maybe even upwards of 8 sets. Because with strength, what we want is heavier load, more sets, because we still want to get stimulus. We still want to get an overall volume of reps. We just don't want to get them all at once because we need rest time in between because the load is so heavy. And we need to make sure, specifically with strength sets, I'm almost always telling athletes and adults that I train, you need to rest longer in between strength sets. Research shows that rest for strength could be anywhere from 1.5 minutes all the way up to 3, 4, maybe even 5 minutes, because there's actually a lot of neurological fatigue that takes place when you're exerting so much effort to move a very heavy load. Now, pro tip, in between strength sets, I like to encourage people to use fillers in their program. So rather than just kind of stand around and spend 2 or 3 minutes like staring at your phone, spend time doing some like light mobility work in between your strength sets or some light core work. That way you feel like you're still productive, you're still getting a lot done, you're working on your weaknesses, but you're kind of getting this active rest where your nervous system can recover a little bit, and then you can come back into your next set exert a lot of energy knowing that you have to move a very, very heavy load. So strength is so important. A lot of people shy away from this because they think that typically that they might get injured or that it's just very uncomfortable. And to be quite frank, like strength work is just, it's tough psychologically to move a heavy bar of weight or heavy dumbbells. It takes a lot. You kind of have to get your mind right. But with that said, it's such an important quality to develop, not only for athletes, I think, which is obvious because of its translation to sport, but also for just general population, because strength work is associated with better longevity, better bone density, better blood pressure. There's so many things. Plus, not to mention, being able to move not only weight in the weight room, but being able to move things in daily life, help your friends move, move a couch, move a table, pick up boxes, go on a trip, move things around, carry your luggage, carry groceries. All those things, you don't realize how important your independence is until it's gone. And that's why strength work is so important. But as I was saying, there's sort of this fear a lot of times of, one, it's hard, so I don't want to do it, or there's this risk of injury. I always push back on that. I think if you do heavy strength work, you actually make yourself more resilient. And Dave and I have talked about that at length in previous episodes, where we talk about not having a fragile mindset, but going into your weightlifting sessions knowing that your body is actually resilient, and the more you push it, the more it will continue to adapt. Now, of course, you can misconstrue this and say, well, what if you're doing stupid stuff? Well, obviously, you need to be doing things with safe form. But I want to reiterate, you're resilient, and strength work is so beneficial. We incorporate it with all of our clients here, no exception. It is something that is a foundation for developing not only an injury-free program or striving towards one, but also developing long-term performance and health goals. So next week, I really hope to dive more extensively into power and help differentiate the main differences between power and strength, because those two often get mixed up, and then how to incorporate, in following episodes, hopefully how to incorporate hypertrophy or muscle building as sort of a base or foundation of your program, and then also what is the role of muscular endurance. So not all these are necessarily in order of the qualities that you should be developing if you're new, but hopefully you can take this as a global plan and begin to implement some of these things and add these attributes into your program. So until next time, stay healthy AF.